And I'm going to turn it over to Jen Lyle, our CEO. And once Jen's had the opportunity to share her comments with you, we're going to show a brief video, and then we're going to turn it over to our panelists, to Jim, Geri, and Sana. And each panelist will have 5 minutes to answer a question. We've got 2 rounds of questions, and then we're going to open the floor to you, the audience, so we can hear your feedback, your comments, your thoughts, your questions. And please note that we're going to hold off on answering questions until we get to the end of the webinar, or the end of our session of the webinar, I should say. But we encourage you to type your questions into the chat if they occur to you as our panelists are speaking today. So I'm going to turn it over to Jen. Welcome.
Thanks, Heather, and thanks for the introduction, and thanks to everybody who's joining us here today on World Alzheimer's Day. I think it's particularly relevant that we're talking about age-friendly and dementia-friendly communities on World Alzheimer's Day, and it's so important, and there's a couple reasons why. According to the BC CDC, about 74,000 British Columbians are currently living with the diagnosis of dementia. Now, the actual number of people who are living with dementia is likely higher because we know people who are living with dementia likely have or often have difficulty accessing a diagnosis. So that's a significant number of people, but I also want you to keep this number in mind as well, and it's 6 in 10. Recent polling data conducted by Leger on behalf of the Alzheimer's Society BC found that about 6 in 10 British Columbians have a personal connection to dementia. So for all of you who are here on the call today, whether you know it or not, chances are you know someone who's personally impacted by dementia. The other thing that I want to share with you is that we know that the majority of people who are living with dementia, or people who are living with dementia and their family members, still experience a significant degree of stigma, and we still hold a lot of misconceptions and discrimination around the issue of dementia. And I have another number for you that underscores that, and it's about half. As in, about half of British Columbians believe that it is no longer possible to live a meaningful life once you have a diagnosis of dementia. And we know that's just not true. Just like we know that you can still live a meaningful life and use a wheelchair, that you can still live a meaningful life and have a hearing impairment or a visual impairment, or that you have something that means that you experience the world a little bit differently than maybe other people around you. But that doesn't mean that it is impossible for you to live a meaningful life. And so that's why conversations around age-friendly and dementia-friendly communities are so important, because to be honest with you, the reason why we either experience our communities in a positive light or a negative light has a lot to do with how our communities are designed. Or more specifically, whether or not our communities, our places, our spaces, our neighbors are equipped to be able to support the abilities we have to enable us to participate as full citizens in the communities in which we live, or on the flip side, take away from our abilities. So that's why conversations like today matter, especially on days like World Alzheimer's Day. And that's why I'm so thrilled to be here for the discussion and to hear from people like Geri and to hear from people like Jim and Sana about what we can do, both within our communities more broadly, but as neighbors, as family members, and as friends, to create dementia-friendly communities. So again, thank you for joining us. Thrilled to be here. And I'm going to turn the mic back over to Heather.
Thanks, Jen. And we're going to start with just a very brief video, just to give you a bit of an orientation to dementia-friendly communities.
Did you know that more than 500,000 Canadians, like me, live with dementia? Or that 1 in 5 Canadians care for someone who lives with dementia? Like me, many people living with dementia still live in our communities after we are diagnosed. It isn't always easy, though. Often, we feel left out and worried about how we'll be treated by others. Sometimes people just don't understand what dementia is and how it affects the brain, or know what to do if we forget something or get confused. So they seem frustrated or dismissive, and sometimes the places we'd like to go are just more difficult to get around. I once got lost trying to find the washrooms in a restaurant, because of the loud music, poor lighting, and confusing signs. But it doesn't have to be like this. Everyone in the community can play a part in helping people living with dementia feel welcome and in creating accessible and inclusive spaces for everybody to enjoy. When our communities are dementia-friendly, people living with dementia feel less worried about how we will be treated and more confident about going out. Have you ever thought about what it would be like to live with dementia in your community or workplace? Is your community supportive, inclusive, and accessible for people living with dementia? Is it dementia-friendly in ways that let people stay engaged in community life? Would you recognize the signs that someone may be living with dementia and be able to offer the right type of support? Would you be comfortable talking to someone if you knew they were living with dementia? Would you know how to respond if someone seemed confused or had trouble expressing themselves? Are the businesses, organizations, and public spaces in your community designed so people can use them independently without getting disoriented, lost, or experiencing stigma because they are living with dementia? People living with dementia shouldn't have to work harder than everyone else to stay a part of the community. Wouldn't it be great if the neighborhoods and communities that we all share were dementia-friendly? Together with the Alzheimer's Society and community members like you, let's keep challenging the stereotypes and building a dementia-friendly Canada where everyone feels welcomed and supported. Take the first step and visit alzheimer.ca/dementia-friendly Canada to learn more about Dementia-Friendly Canada. You'll find lots of information, education, and resources to help you and your organization become more dementia-friendly members of your community.
All right, before you launch into the next video there on my screen playing in the background, so I want to bring on now our panelists for this afternoon. So I'm going to unpin Jen here, and I'm going to bring Jim Mann on. Jim is an ardent advocate for us here at the Society, and Jim lives with dementia. I'm also going to bring on here, if I can find her in my list. There she is, Geri. I'm going to add Geri Hinton. Geri also brings lived expertise to our panel discussion today. Geri was the caregiver for her late husband, Peter, who had dementia. And last but not least, I'm going to bring on Sana Aziz. And Sana, as I mentioned earlier, is our provincial coordinator of dementia-friendly communities at the Society. And so now that we showed you that video and gave you a bit of a brief introduction to dementia-friendly communities, I'm going to turn it over to our panelists so that you can learn a little more. And I'm going to start with Jim today. And Jim, our first question today is, what does a dementia-friendly community mean to you as someone living with dementia?
Thanks, Heather. It will still see me and listen to me, and friends who will still invite me for coffee. That is the kind of dementia-friendly community. That is my kind of dementia-friendly community, where I or any others living with dementia are not thought of as having lost our marbles. The dementia-friendly community recognizes that the people living with dementia still have a lot to offer their community, that people need understanding from their community, and I would add, a community that is open to learning more about dementia and engaging with the residents with dementia to overcome any preconceived notions that they themselves may have. Where community members delivering medical care are knowledgeable and person-focused, and who are not making assumptions of incapacity simply based on the word dementia on the patient's chart. Like the account I read a few years ago included in a thesis, that the patient in acute care felt that because of the label of dementia, quote, he was viewed and treated as a subclass on the ward. The dementia-friendly community will pay attention to the physical environment for ease of access, and, for example, tripping hazards are removed to make navigating neighborhoods a positive experience. That encourages business and community services to adapt and support people living with dementia by increasing awareness and understanding. This insight will arm their workers with knowledge about disorientation and how to identify and assist that person to keep them safe and on the correct path to their destination. One way to achieve a dementia-friendly community is to be open to including the lived experience voices. They are the people who can offer on-the-ground feedback on their neighborhood that in many cases is unique and helpful insight. To become dementia-friendly is to listen to the people living with dementia. As I prepared my remarks, I asked myself, why is there a hesitation by individuals to share their diagnosis of Alzheimer's or another type of dementia? When this is a medical condition, why do many people tend to keep their diagnosis to themselves or strictly within the family? Stigma of dementia is certainly one reason why, but fear is a big factor. The fear of rejection by the community, the fear of being othered and being easily dismissed by friends and the community. Empowering people living with dementia and recognizing their contributions will be confirmation of the community's efforts and desires to become dementia-friendly. And it will also reassure those people living with dementia that their community has their back. I want to end my contribution by quoting Dr. Jonathan Evans, a geriatrician who said in a video entitled Person-Centered Matters that dementia doesn't take away your ability to be a human, your humanness, and it shouldn't take away your humanity. On the contrary, he said, it often brings it out. Even though dementia is something that affects the brain, dementia does not equal or result in a loss of intelligence. On the contrary, people use their intelligence to overcome some of the impairments that dementia causes. He ended saying, while there are many losses people experience from dementia, dementia doesn't make you stupid. Dementia does not rob you of your ability to experience joy, to be happy.
Thank you, Jim. Geri, over to you. So when you think about a dementia-friendly community, what does it mean to you, particularly with that perspective of a care partner of someone living with dementia?
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this forum. You know, for 24 years now, I've been associated with the Alzheimer's Society of BC as a caregiver to my husband, Peter, who was diagnosed in 1998 and died in 2008. And prior to that, as the executive director for the Office for Seniors in BC, I knew of the society through my connection to Barbara Lindsay, who was instrumental in the development of the society's initial strategic plan, and who was pleased to receive government support for their work and the acknowledgement for the strides the organization had made in advocacy and education. They were ahead of their time in those early days, and I think they now have continued to provide outstanding and excellent leadership in BC, across Canada, and beyond. And we have Jen Lyle now taking this all on, and I'm looking very much forward to having, I don't think another 24 years, Jen, but as long as I can hang in there. You know, my Peter and I were on a journey. It started with him saying that he was forgetting what he'd read the evening before, and I dismissed it as fatigue. A year went by, and then sailing one weekend, Peter was rummaging in the cabin while I was at the wheel. I called to him to ask what he was looking for, and he responded, "The depth sounder." My heart sank. For those of you who don't sail, the depth sounder is a piece of equipment that is fastened in place in the cockpit, so the person on the wheel can tell how much water they have under the keel so they won't run aground. I knew in that moment that my sailor had dementia. He'd been sailing since he was 10 years old. This is often how the diagnosis can be made. Something unusual happens to distinguish dementia from a simple forgetful moment. I think it's important to say at this time that I'm an old nurse and have had experience through my work over many years. And it did give me an advantage that many don't have when they come to this moment of a diagnosis of dementia. And that's even more reason for us to ensure that we've got the necessary support in place to create a dementia-friendly community. So what does that mean to me? First of all, it means a network of friends who accept us as we are and include us in all the things we've always done. Together, honesty and openness are important. And so in that relationship, you can't hide it. And telling family and friends can actually help the process of acceptance and allow you to continue living life as fully as possible. Dementia-friendly also means planning in advance and being sure that in your communities of interest, that you have an understanding that you need to plan for things to keep your environment calm and free of frustration. Planning in advance for unusual events included for us a small network of close friends who knew they were on a list and were prepared to come anytime in an emergency. I needed that list when I fell and broke my ankle. When we started the call out, a friend showed up in about 20 minutes, stayed overnight with Peter while I went for treatment. Community support from friends and strangers is also part of a dementia-friendly environment. As time went on, I began to notice that occasionally friends would say, "Now, Geri, if there's anything I can do, please just call." Well, I'm not likely to call. And so on one particular afternoon, when that did happen, I said, "I need a lasagna on Tuesday." There was a look of complete surprise on my friend's face, but I got the lasagna and I also got a salad too. If you are a friend or a support to a family caregiver, just offer something specific and special, and the day and time you will provide it. It was always such a relief and pleasure to have meals brought and muffins made. And so to move along, I think there are some other elements that are really important for caregivers, especially in this role that we play. Continuing communication is an important element, and recognizing and dealing with issues in a timely way is critical. Contacts with business and service agencies. Grocery stores were a particular challenge for us, and Peter, who was by nature and by profession a man in control, would find it frustrating, especially in narrow aisles. We decided we could manage if he took the cart and I would decide what went in it. One issue was meeting people we knew in the store, as he really couldn't recognize anyone. We developed a little game, and when anyone we knew came along, I would lean into Peter and say, "This is Susan coming down the aisle." And he could remember just long enough to say, "Hello, Susan, how lovely to see you. How are you?" And I will never forget Susan coming by me later to say, "Gosh, it's so great that Peter remembered me." Attendance at dentists and doctors' offices, banking and exercise facilities became routines for us, and staff in every environment tried to meet our expectations of understanding, patience, and dignity, and spoke directly to Peter and not over his head. Sometimes it required a little redirection, but the staffs were always willing to adjust and in so many situations went out of their way to provide extra support. And finally, I want to say the relationship to the formal system in late stage dementia is such a critical element. The time came when I could no longer care for Peter at home. Our journey continued at the Veterans Lodge at Broadmead. I spent every day from 10 a.m. until he went to sleep. I was there to feed, bathe, be his companion, and generally live our life in a new and different environment for 18 months. This required negotiation, understanding, patience, good communications with all members of the Veterans Lodge team and other parts of the formal healthcare system. It was an essential element of a dementia-friendly environment for us both. My thoughts reflect a caring community of friends, efforts by so many to accommodate both Peter and me, the knowledge and support of the Alzheimer's Society who were with us from the beginning, businesses, government agencies, doctors, and local health and provincial long-term care services were all there to support. There was an understanding for our desire to choose the manner in which we would live our journey. This is what a dementia-friendly community can be, and we should strive to ensure that everyone with lived experience and their caregivers and families have the same opportunity.
Thank you, Geri. And now I'd like to turn it over to Sana Aziz. And so Sana, what does a dementia-friendly community mean to you as someone who's leading the Society's Dementia-Friendly Communities Initiative here in British Columbia?
Wow, this is a tough act to follow. Thank you, Heather, for the question. Thank you, Jim and Geri, for sharing your thoughts on this question. It's always enlightening and incredibly important for me to hear directly from people who have lived experience. As I reflect on your answers, I think of the people in my life who have lived with dementia, and maybe the people that audience know, individuals who may be living with dementia that they have come across. What would be an inclusive community to them? And I think of what a dementia-friendly community means for me and how we at the Alzheimer's Society of BC can help make them a reality. A dementia-friendly community is one that focuses on stigma reduction and the inclusion of people living with dementia in the places they work, live, and play. Dementia-friendly communities are places where people living with dementia, their families, their care partners feel included, acknowledged, and supported. A dementia-friendly community can be a city or a neighborhood, a location within any of these places, such as a grocery store or a library. It could even be groups and service organizations, such as book clubs or faith-based organizations that are working to create accessible and inclusive communities. In a dementia-friendly community, people are aware of and understand so that people living with dementia can continue to live in the way they want to and in the community they choose. Like Jim said, we know that too many people affected by dementia feel that society fails to understand the condition they live with and the impact it has on them. They report barriers to feeling included in their communities because people don't understand how to interact with them. This often causes them to withdraw from community interaction, resulting in diminished quality of life and loss of personal connections. This is not okay. People living with dementia still have an incredible amount to contribute to their community, and Jim joining us here today is a notable example of that. They shouldn't have to work harder than others to continue living and being a part of their community. I envision a dementia-friendly community to be a place where people living with dementia and their care partners can freely carry out daily activities, be social and active, and meet fewer barriers and less stigma than they would experience otherwise. Speaking to Geri's experience, I'd like to see an inclusive community where friends are there for their friends or neighbors who are affected by dementia. They don't withdraw. They continue to reach out, invite them to coffee, go out to play golf, offer to bring lasagna, or show up at a 20-minute notice when a friend needs them. A community where municipalities, service providers, and businesses take the responsibility to do their part in creating comfortable and welcoming spaces for all. Everyone has a role to play in helping make their communities become dementia friendly. As we work with various municipalities, businesses, service organizations across the province, we recognize that dementia friendly communities may mean different things to different groups. We also recognize that a place may never completely be dementia friendly because each individual's journey is unique. However, there are a few key components of being dementia friendly that I like to think of, and I think we all need to pay attention to that. Number one being accessible. As Jim mentioned, it is important for a community to be safe and inclusive in both their physical structure and their social environment. So for example, from a physical perspective, a dementia-friendly spaces are ideally well lit with clear signage. Quieter spaces are provided to facilitate successful communication. And in these spaces, community members are informed of dementia-friendly practices. From a social perspective, having the awareness of the disease and how it works, as well as providing education, such as communication strategies, can help the average community member who may or may not be directly affected by dementia to have a role and play a role in supporting someone living with dementia as they move within their community. Another component of being dementia friendly is active communication and championing. So as Geri mentioned, continuous communication is quite an element and key to developing a stress-free and smooth environment. It's important to ensure that the unique voices of people living with dementia are heard and that the community members are open to listening, accepting, including, and supporting those voices. People affected by dementia truly have the most important role in creating dementia-friendly communities. Having champions in the community like Jim and Geri are pivotal in educational work, advocacy, story sharing, supporting others, and creating change. By sharing their lived experiences and connecting with others, they can share their journey and identify the gaps in our healthcare system, in policy, in community services and supports. And together we can work towards addressing those gaps and build communities that are more accessible and inclusive.
Thanks, Anna. So now that we've shared kind of your perspectives of what dementia-friendly communities mean to each of you, I'm thinking that those in our audience today are probably curious about what they might be able to do to support the creation of dementia-friendly British Columbia. And so, Jim, I'm going to turn it back to you and say, how can folks in our audience today, how might they be able to support the creation of a dementia-friendly community? As someone living with dementia, what are your thoughts?
Well, they can be an ally and they can learn about dementia. I cannot stress that enough. Access resources like the Canadian Charter of Rights for People with Dementia, the Alzheimer's Society of BC website, and the www.flippingstigma.com toolkit. If a group of friends got together for coffee before one of the members was diagnosed with dementia, continue to include that person. Dr. Jason Karlowicz, a physician and writer at the University of Pennsylvania, wrote earlier this year, "Stigma haunts Alzheimer's disease like ghosts haunt Halloween. Oftentimes, it will lead them to not tell other people the diagnosis because they don't want to be treated differently. So I ask you to please don't be that person or community." You know, a few years ago, the Alzheimer's Society had a campaign, #StillHere, that reinforced that people living with dementia are in the community, are functioning in the community and contributing, which is a lesson an acquaintance of mine realized hasn't been adopted by everyone. For years and years, this gentleman used to run men's night at his golf club. He knew all the rules and handled the money. the day after club members were told of his Alzheimer's diagnosis, they stopped asking him about a rule, and he no longer looked after the money, or anything else for that matter. It's so obvious, he said, that people are assuming incapability. And that assumption of incapability will inhibit community members from throwing their support behind dementia-friendly initiatives. What I believe is there can't or won't be support if a friend, a store clerk, or care aide, or even a family member doesn't know what it is they're supporting or how they can support. And that's where the community comes in. They can show their support. They can illustrate their commitment to inclusion by inviting and acknowledging the voices of people living with dementia and highlighting the value of hearing and listening. For example, inviting those in the community living with dementia to provide input on their neighborhoods outside public spaces and facilities being accessible and dementia-friendly. I guarantee there will be many aha moments. It's also important to note that different people will look for different community supports as they find the need. As an example, a woman in my community received her diagnosis of dementia from her doctor and returned home and shut the door. Literally shut the door. Didn't tell a soul of her diagnosis, including her daughter. She only went out her front door when absolutely necessary and otherwise blocked herself off. The turning point for her was receiving an Alzheimer's Society newsletter that included a small item and accompanying photo about something I had participated in. She thought, you know what, if he can do this, so can I. And she started attending my support group. To be an ally is so very important. To be inclusive and listen is vital. To be reassuring to your friend or colleague by inviting and including them as you did before is cherished. And to take the time to learn about dementia is time not wasted.
Thank you, Jim. Some really insightful points there that you've shared with us. And so over to you, Geri, as the care partner of someone who is living with dementia. What would support the creation of a dementia-friendly community as a care partner?
You know, like Jim, I think the concept of dementia-friendly communities fit with the current international and national legislation, including the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and Canada's Bill C-81, which is called the Accessible Canada Act. In essence, they reflect the importance of removing any and all barriers that prevent any person's full and equal participation in society. We all can look to these frameworks for guidance in developing our dementia-friendly community missions or policies and programs, and built into any framework should be an evaluation component with the measurement tools to determine the success of our developing strategies and whether they've met the desired outcomes or not. As we age, our well-being depends on a broad range of interconnecting factors that are an accumulation of a lifetime of experience, effects, and outcomes. Each dementia journey is unique. It is essential that we develop approaches to our policy and programs that reflect this diversity. And education and knowledge are key in our efforts to enhance the quality of life for the individual diagnosed with dementia and their caregivers and families. You know, currently there seems to be more focus in organizations and with service providers and businesses to practice good governance with the development of 3 to 5 year strategic plans. This is an excellent opportunity to reflect the mission of full and equal participation, as well as value statements that should include dignity, autonomy, safety and security, accommodation and fairness, and the recognition of the right to self-determination. A greater emphasis must be placed on advocacy and education of the public at large, social organizations, religious centers, and educational institutions, so that they can refer their contacts and their members appropriately to dementia information sources and the supportive programs and services which will really help them in living life as fully as possible. Currently, the Alzheimer's Society of BC has an annual Breakfast to Remember and the annual Walk for Memories. These are ideal ways to enhance the knowledge and understanding of dementia and to garner the financial and other supports for further programs, research, advocacy, and education. We all must be a part of and encourage these activities and spread the word. In 2004, my husband Peter was the honoree for the walk in Victoria here and took it to heart. He negotiated with the Navy to come with the Naden band and all the sailors that were available. It was a cold but terrific morning in January, and the public were walking to the music of the band for the cause. The walk and the breakfast provides the opportunity to bring together all the sectors in support of dementia-friendly communities. Not only in BC, but I think throughout our nation and even the world. I see this as a kind of a world event in some sort of ways. And we want partnerships in action for a community development model. And we can't underestimate the importance of leadership at all levels of government and in communities to ensure that our policies and programs are dementia inclusive. All the sectors could be included in partnership initiatives and collaboration. And a key element to this is the inclusion and consultation with persons with dementia and their caregivers as a part of the planning of any policy or program. Government ministries and social planners must do more to integrate self-care and mutual aid into any health and social transformation strategy. These programs need innovative designs to overcome barriers to access, such as touch telephone, home videos, computer supports, and all of these should be universally accessible. These tools have also been proven to reduce the caregiver's perceived burden of stress and care. The benefits of self-care and mutual aid strategies for persons with dementia have been shown to improve the quality of life through the promotion of more active participation with online connections and support groups, activity centers for physical and social interaction, and a lot of community programs now that are artistic and musical in an endeavor to participate and to enhance the quality of life for people who really have had in their past so much relationship to the artistic and musical components. And you know, I've spoken now about the formal ways we have to develop dementia-friendly communities. I just want to say, I've had an experience with a more organic form when my Peter was in an early stage support group. And I used to wait in the lobby while he had his meeting, and then I would drive him home. And before I realized that there were other drivers also sitting in the lobby, I suddenly noticed that the spontaneous conversations about where to find resources, what to do about certain issues, how could we help? And I thought, we have a lobby support group. And so over the weeks of the length of time that our partners were in the early stage group, the lobby support group went about finding ways to accommodate and to support and to assist. And we stayed together for many months after we actually formed our organic support group. And although the Alzheimer's Society wanted to know more about it, and I think they would like to have formalized it, we insisted that we were doing just fine with each person taking leadership as they felt so inclined. So it happens, and the supports come if we just allow ourselves to be open and allow ourselves to feel that we have a part to play in making our community dementia friendly.
Thank you, Geri. A lovely illustration of that. It doesn't always have to be formal supports with the ideas of dementia friendly. And so, Santa, over to you just for some reflection for you as someone who works quite closely with businesses and organizations and municipalities. How do we put into action some of these supports that both Geri and Jim have alluded to in their comments?
It's a great question, Heather. Thank you, Jim and Geri, for sharing your thoughts on this. Both of you have beautifully highlighted the critical importance of building dementia-friendly communities. The Dementia-Friendly Communities Initiative at the Alzheimer's Society of BC strives to create awareness, bust myths and misconceptions associated with dementia, and support the public and sectors to learn and understand what they can do to make a difference in their communities or spaces and how they can contribute to becoming more dementia friendly. I cannot emphasize enough, just like Jim said, that we all have a role to play, to be an ally, a committed listener, practice good governance, and create community partnerships wherever we may be. We know that at least 60% of people continue to live at home in their communities after a dementia diagnosis. As both Jim and Geri mentioned, oftentimes people affected by dementia feel neglected and removed from their surroundings because of the misconceptions about the disease, people's lack of knowledge and awareness of how to help, and the fear and denial of the disease. Often, people at all levels think of dementia as a medical situation, when in fact, it's not only a medical issue, but it's a social concern. One of the ways in which we raise awareness is through dementia education, where community members are educated about dementia and know that a person living with dementia may sometimes experience the world differently. Community members who are dementia friendly know a person living with dementia is more than their diagnosis, understand dementia can affect a person's cognition, behavior, emotions, and physical capabilities, and recognize the signs of dementia and know how to communicate effectively and respectfully. At the Alzheimer's Society of BC, we have found that dementia-friendly communities initiatives are most successful when we build on the strengths of programs that already exist. For example, think of all the age-friendly initiatives in the province and all the work underway on accessibility. To elaborate, an age-friendly lens may identify the need for more seating in a park. A dementia-friendly lens would recommend that the design of the seating is not ambiguous or abstract, that a seat actually looks like a seat, not an art installation, so that the seat may actually represent its use and not cause confusion to someone living with dementia who may have changes in abstract thinking. Now, going back to your question, Heather, we partner and build relationships with municipalities across British Columbia to identify what a dementia-friendly city or space means for them, keeping the learnings from our champions in the forefront. And we support them in achieving their goals through policy and education. In some municipalities, that entails creating a dementia-friendly action plan, which is a step-by-step guide or a commitment in ways that they will work towards becoming more dementia-friendly. For some other municipalities, it's being a part of their accessibility strategy or other advisory committees to represent and advocate for the voices of lived experiences. Across the board, we aspire to educate and build awareness of dementia to all groups and services. And some examples of the kind of work that we continue to do in the community includes training, for example, to tax departments, libraries, recreation centers, neighborhood houses, restaurants, police, first responders, RCMP. And the list is long and it has to become even longer. But really, at the end, the goal is of reducing stigma, raising awareness so people know how to support and can be an equal partner in becoming more dementia friendly. Now, I notice that my time here has almost come to an end. And at the end, before I pass over the mic to Heather, I want to say thank you to our audience, to our participants today for joining us in today's session. Being in this audience today means you're already a supporter of age and dementia-friendly communities. It means you care and you have an interest and an openness to learn. I hope that in this short time, we have been able to give you a glimpse of what it means to be dementia friendly at its core. Yes, there is more work to be done, but we are so fortunate to be guided by champions like Jim and Geri, who dedicate so much of their time to building inclusive and supportive communities. I encourage each of you to take the step and learn about dementia. Know that the Alzheimer's Society of BC's website is a treasure trove of further information, including resources for people living with dementia, for care partners, for members of the community, and other sectors. Please feel free to connect with me at any time to learn more, share ideas, or brainstorm ways in which you can support your community and develop this initiative. Building a dementia-friendly province is a movement, and it will require a culture change. And we have heard loud and clear that now is the time. Together we're ready, and we're committed to making British Columbia more dementia-friendly. Over to you, Heather.
Thanks, Anna. So thank you to Jim and Geri and Sana. Those are really big questions that we posed to you today, and trying to condense them into a 5-minute window or response is difficult. But there are some common threads that run through what Jim, Geri, and Sana said today. And while the uniqueness of the disease means that different people living with dementia and their care partners require different supports, what is common to all is the stigma that continues to surround dementia. And yet individuals living with dementia, like Jim and Geri's late husband, Peter, have the right to enjoy all that we as individuals living without dementia enjoy. So the freedom of movement within our community, the company and enjoyment of good friends, ready communication with those who we encounter when out and about during our daily lives, accessible grocery stores, banks, and other businesses that have quiet areas, clear signage, and staff who know how to communicate with someone with cognitive impairment. It's really about all of us working from a strength-based approach to empower individuals living with dementia. As Jim noted, it's about assuming capability rather than incapability. And it's municipal election time here in British Columbia. So think about approaching your local politicians and asking them what they're doing to support the inclusion of individuals living with dementia and age and dementia-friendly approaches within the community. But also reach out to your neighbors and friends. Talk to your colleagues about what you've heard here today and spread the word. Be an ally and be an advocate. And above all, be inclusive. Reach out to connect with those who you know may be living with dementia and invite them to share their experiences, their needs, their wishes, so that you can support them in their journey.
Really good to be here with everybody, and especially to hear the first part of the program. It's so heartening to see the thrust of it all, because without us talking to each other, discussing anything together at all, you'll see that the very first thing for me is thinking about the origins of the change that we need to have. And looking, I was looking historically, just thinking about the incredible impact that families, persons who are experiencing dementia, the communities, providers, service providers, everyone having that say and being that advocate to really make sure we have change. So when I was listening to the presentations so far, it made me think about a couple of things that I think I'll share now. And so looking back, so the first time I remember being inside what we now would call a care home, then we called a nursing home, was when I was 13, I think. I was going to junior high school, so it was somewhere like in the early, maybe 60s. And I was working in the kitchen there after school from 3:30 to 7:30. We were rolling the dishes out, the dinners out on a cart, and the care staff was taking the meals to the residents. And myself and another friend who were working there, we looked, all we did was put the food on the tray and then pushed it out the door, put the whole cart out the door for someone else to get. But when we looked out the door, we saw older adults in wheelchairs, in restraints, the wheelchair tied to the little bar, the walking bar, and the resident tied to the chair. And we talked for quite a while, for probably a couple of weeks, about, like, it just didn't seem very stimulating. It didn't seem like anybody could ever have a good life being tied to a chair and then tied to a wall. And so the two of us decided that, anyway, we didn't know we were doing research, but I guess we were. We decided to each adopt, that's our language then, one of the residents who was regularly tied there when we put the meals out. We stopped and talked to them. We brought little gifts. We just engaged. And we both noticed that they seemed to be doing way better than the other people that were tied next to them. And we also had some of the care staff come to us and say, Mrs. Jones seems to be eating better. And so anyway, that was my first experience of really looking at what it would mean to be an atmosphere, an environment that was at least gave the opportunity to thrive at whatever you were able to do, to be able to do it to your maximum. And then the other thing it made me think about was I was in a care facility where I had met a fellow there. He used to be a trapper, and I noticed he wasn't very verbal, and I was just volunteering. And I used to bring in we used to have what we call coffee table books. I don't know if people call them that anymore, but books with gorgeous pictures of outdoors. And I thought, he's not verbal right now. So I think I'll just bring these books and show him and just see. And so I would talk to him, we'll say George, it wasn't George, but I would talk to him and say, oh, look at this, isn't that incredible? What's going on out there, look at this tree. And this one day I pointed to a picture of a mountain goat on a precipice. And I said, George, how the heck does that mountain goat stay there? Why isn't it falling off? And out of the blue, I was told he doesn't speak. And basically it was implied that he doesn't think. And he said, center of gravity. And even I didn't understand that. I had to go look it up when I got home. So just listening to everything made me think about those two stories. And the fact that it's what we do as individuals, whatever level, wherever we are, if we're able to speak out and advocate, it really can make a difference. And for me, it made a difference in that care facility when I was 13 years old. And when I was volunteering, it also made a difference, because I had some of the care staff come to me and say, well, he doesn't speak. He doesn't understand. Why are you doing that? And then he says, center of gravity, and a whole different attitude. And I don't know if it lasted when I wasn't volunteering anymore, but it opened a path for some people. And I just think that role that we all can play is so important. The actual example that I was going to talk about is the example, though, that those were things that came up after the conversation, but is the support group that developed here in Prince George. When I moved up here in 95, 6 timeframe, I right away got engaged with the Alzheimer's Society here. Another example, a very active community group that grew out of the community. It was women primarily whose partners had some kind of dementia, and they wanted something. And so they organized the branch up here, and really very, very engaging. And one of the questions that came up was, why do we were able to support each other, but what about the persons that were experiencing the dementia? Why didn't they have a group? And a number of people raised that who themselves were experiencing dementia, like, why, can we get together? And that was one of the very first, not the first, there was a couple of others already happening in British Columbia, but that was one of the first, we called it then an early stage dementia support group that was organized, I won't say solely by, there was support to help organize it, but what we did at those groups, I was a co-facilitator, and what we did there was determined by the group. And really, way back then, feeling that sense of accomplishment to be able to actually make a change that was meaningful, both to the residents in the care facilities that I talked about, but also in that case, in terms of the support group, to make a difference in the lives, both of those experiencing the dementia, as well as their partners and family members. So I guess the first thing I wanted to highlight was just that incredibly important role that we all can play. And anyway, just to highlight that. And then, of course, I want to be able to talk about some of the projects that are going on and activities that are going on in Northern BC. And it'll be a really quick description. But one of them that I'm going to spend a little bit more time on is this one, the intergenerational activities for growth and engagement. We called it the Inter-Age Project. And what happened with this project was there was three of us, myself, Shannon Freeman, professor in nursing, and then one of the managers at Northern Health, who we got together and we were talking about our own experiences within our own lives, about just the question of what happened when people got older, the connection, the engagement, the disengagement, and decided that we wanted to do something together. And anyway, much longer story short, the idea came up of having a co-housing environment where some of the university students would be able to live with adults in assisted living and long-term care. And that idea, it took a couple of years to really get it formalized and able to go. But just to give you a sense of what we did, we talked, first of all, we talked to the residents in the long-term care and assisted living location to hear what they would think about that, if they were going to have some university students live there. We talked with the staff that were working there. What did they think? Were there any issues from their perspective? We talked with students at the university about what they thought would be something that students could contribute in that environment, and what could they learn from that environment. And we talked with the administration of the university and of Northern Health. To make a much longer story a little bit shorter, we were able to successfully have all these discussions, get the input from people living there, living in the long-term care and assisted living, from the students, from Northern Health, from the university. And we were able to come up with a plan where we were able to have 2 students who would live in this particular residence. Now, one of the issues, of course, was to make sure that they weren't taking the space of a potential resident, because of course we know there's wait lists. So we dealt with that. The students were staying in locations which in fact had been offices and which were not available for residents. So we were able to talk that through. We were able to talk to the students about what kind of contribution, why did they want to do it? We interviewed people to decide who would be able to be the 2 students. And we were able to have informal kinds of interview relationships with the residents talking to the students when they came in for their interviews, and really got a feel from staff, from residents, and from the students about whether this would be a good fit and what kinds of contributions and connections people could make. It was really a very exciting process, and something that I think all of us learned from. And over time, we had 3 iterations before COVID hit. and we're hoping to be able to begin again, perhaps in the next academic year, but we're having those discussions. But the main thing to say is that this process was a collaborative process. The residents came together, they talked with the students about what they would like to learn from the students talked about things they'd like to learn, they made contributions, and importantly, we had a course that took place at the care facility and the long-term care home, where residents came, the students came, some of the staff came when they were able, some community members and family members participated. So we had both the exchange and living together situation between the residents and the students. We had a course, and from the very beginning, we integrated an evaluative process, which included a whole number of ways of speaking with the staff, the students, the residents about the experience and things that they'd like to see changed for the next period. So it's been a very exciting process. We're really enthusiastic about the response that we had. We are hoping that we'll be able to do this again and perhaps expand to some other locations. I'd love to be able to do a whole talk on this and give you some of the quotes and feedback that came from the residents, the students, and the staff and community members. It was all positive. Of course, there were things that, you know, when residents and students were having lunch, some residents felt that they weren't maybe getting as much attention. So there was discussion about how to do that, how to rotate so that you would share the time with people. There was some struggle when students were finished their term there, because we had 3 iterations and the residents didn't want them not to be there. So we had to go through a period of time to figure out how to be able to have them come back. And they did come back as volunteers. And that was the way that we were able to sort out that part of the process. Anyway, it's a very exciting project. And I can certainly provide folks, if you'd like more information about how it happened and the work that took place, I can definitely provide that for you. The other thing that I think maybe many people on this call already know about is the Demscape project. And that project is across British Columbia, and I know the Alzheimer's Society is very aware of it. It's being, in terms of universities, it's at the main, the lead on the project is at SFU. We have also researchers at UBC and up here where I am at UNBC. And basically, really, we're trying to do so many of the things that both Geri and Jim and also Santa talked about. And that is to actually have the folks who are experiencing dementia, their care partner, if they wish, to actually do a walk through their neighborhoods and talk about what are the kinds of things that you would like to see done differently. And just trying to glean what things they're thinking, also working with those at the university who do planning, community planning in the region, talking to the city. Someone mentioned the fact that we're going into an election, definitely talking to the city about what kinds of things they may be able to contribute as we try and sort out some of the things that we can do within all the different neighborhoods to make the experience of people who are living with dementia to be the best experience possible. And as I saw in the chat, Heather Lamb, who is also from up here and has worked very much around accessibility issues in Prince George and beyond, absolutely some of the questions that were dealt with as people were looking at the accessibility question are very relevant to dementia-friendly communities. And so I think there's a way to be able to be building on that work, absolutely, for sure. So the goal ultimately, after we do these interviews here, and they're being done in the Lower Mainland as well, is to come up with some suggested policies and initiatives that can be made in order to make the communities more dementia friendly. And for us in Northern BC, we're also trying to take into account some of the particularities of our environment here. Of course, one of those will be literally the environment and the weather, but looking at how can we contribute to that work by advocating through research to do this, to make these changes. And I think the important thing to say is that all this research work, all these initiatives are things that are being done in collaboration with people who are using these services, with families, with community members, with all the community groups that are here. It's very exciting. The other thing I wanted to talk about briefly is the Center for Technology Adoption in the North. We call it CTAN. And that's a new group that has been at UNBC now for, I guess it's getting close to a couple of years. And they've been looking at how to use technology in terms of dementia-friendly communities. And I know that I don't have time to talk about all their projects. I think Mary Lou's going to tell me when I'm getting close, but I wanted to share a couple of things. First of all, we have a demonstration lab at the university. So we've already had seniors from the community, older adults come up and look and see what some of the technology is that's being worked on. The other thing is that we had also within that work, a new housing project that's taking place in Vanderhoof, just to the west of us here, that is focused specifically on meeting the needs of those who have dementia. And one of the things that I thought was really exciting was that they are actually using a new technology that is lighting, which I'm not that familiar with, so I'm just looking it up here. It's called the Aurora Home in Vanderhoof. And one of the examples of the technology is using circadian lighting. And they partner with various companies. So the company is called NanoLit. And this lighting mimics sunlight throughout the day and brings in the qualities of natural lights indoors. And there's a range of, as you can imagine, potential health benefits that could come from that in terms of with dementia, including improving sleep or mood or reducing the sundowning. So really exciting. Another project that they're doing is a gardening project, which has been really something that so many residents, when we had the students in the residence that I talked about with the Interage project, at the same time, we started a project about having it's really a garden, an indoor, primarily indoor garden. There was some raised beds outside as well, but the main thing was that it was a resident requested and driven, co-designed hydroponic garden that was inside the assisted living location. And so from there, we've been able to, CTAN has been able to work with another company called Just Vertical, who is helping develop a vertical kind of hydroponic system that can be well placed within a care facility, within long-term care, within assisted living. And residents have just loved it, really appreciate it. They've contributed so much in terms of what we should change, what should be developed differently, just incredible contributions. And then I guess finally, as time runs out, I wanted to mention the dementia resources for eating activity and meaningful discussion. We always come up with these acronyms. It's called DREAM. And it's really another project they're working on to support as it says here, the design, content, and delivery of physical activity, healthy eating, and other wellness programs to meet the needs and preferences of people living with dementia and their families. And that's a Canada-wide project, but we've done a fair bit of contributing up here, including they've developed some videos. You may want to go on the CTAN website and you can link to that project. They've developed some videos that were done as part of the project, where seniors up here, older adults with dementia, without dementia, caregivers have talked about some of these questions around the physical activity, healthy eating, and the related questions, the kinds of things they see that are helpful and that will be something useful in terms of their own lives. So that's a really fast version of some of the projects. It's so exciting, the number of things that are going on. And I hope that you'll get a chance to maybe look at some of the things that we have, that I've listed there on the PowerPoint in terms of information about these projects. If you didn't get any of it and you've got my name, I'll connect you with the projects if you weren't able to get all the information. The main thing, I guess, that I really, I just love the earlier presentations. The thing that I always underline and I feel like in my heart is that, well, I've said it here, we have such a role to play, whatever we're doing, whether we're in our communities as researchers, as families, as whatever our role is, to bring about these changes. And I really do firmly believe what I've written here. Everyone, by virtue of being human, has the right to live their life to the fullest. And, the work that we collectively undertake and advocate for is an important contribution. It really is. And through it, I think you can feel the changes that are coming about. I'm very enthusiastic about the positive changes. And I think at the same time, I can start to feel, some of the negativity as well, that there's still, I go into this, this care facility and I think, oh my goodness, it doesn't feel person-centered. How do we do this? But you know what? If I think back to that day when those, it was two women that were tied to their wheelchairs and tied to that bar, and what a difference has happened since then. I always remind myself that advocacy, big and small, makes a difference. One care aid there, whatever, we begin to really build that change that we all want to see. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to very quickly talk about some of the projects up here.
All right, well, again, thank you very much for inviting me. Just got one thing going on there. Okay. Yeah, so first of all, I just wanted to show you an image of our new building, just so you get an idea as I'm talking through my slides what it actually looks like. So this is the artist rendering of our building that is being erected as we speak, just behind me, in front of the old St. Joseph's Hospital in Comox, if any of you have ever been there. And we're very excited to present this building. Just some basics around the building. So it's going to be a publicly subsidized building for anybody who's over 18 years old. We have, similar to everywhere in BC, we have a criteria that residents in BC have to meet before they're eligible to come to a long-term care home. And so it would be someone that meets that criteria that would be able to come. It is a 156-bed long-term care facility. It's going to have 13 households consisting of 4 neighborhoods, and each household will have 12 private rooms in them with their own bathroom. We hope that what we're planning on doing is trying to create a social relational model of care versus the one that you see, as I think Dawn was mentioning and other people have mentioned, around the medical model that you often see in a lot of our long-term care facilities. So Alongside building this building, we're also looking at creating a whole new model of care. Within this building, there's also opportunities for intergenerational education and activities. We've got on the ground floor, there will be a childcare area for 32 children to be there. And one of the things that we are very excited about is our continued support from our local Indigenous community. And we have an Indigenous space known as a big house being built inside the courtyard, which I'll show you in a little bit. We're hoping that it'll be ready for occupancy in the summer of 2024. We are on time, on track at the moment. And as I mentioned, we're in Comox in British Columbia, so it's north of Vancouver Island. The one thing we also are very fortunate to have is actually 14 acres of land. And so the other piece that's going to be we're going to be working on over the next few months is how we develop the rest of the site here, which at the moment is where my office is and where the old St. Joseph's Hospital is. But the plan is to create a seniors complex, something where seniors can gather for all sorts of things, not just for the long-term care home, but maybe we're looking at wellness or some types of affordable housing, maybe assisted living, all on this 14 acres that we currently have here that I'm sitting on. The how are we doing this? We have a development design company called Field & Martin that we've been working with. We are being partially funded by BC Housing, and then our direct care, our fundings all come through the Ministry of Health and Island Health Authority. We also work very closely with Providence Healthcare, and they're actually the team that we have that are looking at our new model of care, are also looking at how we can change the model of care of our other 5 long-term care sites at Providence Healthcare. So a little bit about the building overview. As I said, there's 156 private rooms, all with their overhead lift that will take you from the bedroom and into the bathroom if you require it. Each household contains 12 rooms where 12 residents will live. There'll be a living room and a kitchen and a dining area. We're trying to get rid of the concept of a nurses area. So there's going to be more of an open style concept desk that you probably maybe would find at home, an office desk, where we would have some of the essential IT equipment that we need. Each household will have a staff room. It says med room, but it's really more like a cupboard, because again, we're trying to create something that's a home-like feel. There will be access for meeting rooms, and each 2 houses will share what we're calling a spa, moving away from the old concept of a tub room, which is what I hear of all the homes that I go to now around a tub room. So having more of a spa facility, which will hopefully be, which will contain a shower and a tub and an overhead lift. There will be shared laundry rooms, and what we're trying to, within our new model of care, create an environment where if people want to be involved in doing their own laundry, they can. So any of the basic laundry would be done in the household. Any, I would say, larger items like bed linen, that would go downstairs to our in-house laundry. And then obviously we need places for storage, so there'll be some utility rooms. The other things that we're very excited to bring to this new build, I'm just going to move on to the next slide, is our bistro. We're hoping that this will be open to the public, and so not only would our residents be able to go and eat there, assisted with staff, but they could also eat there with members of their family, from visitors coming in, and then hopefully members of the public would also be able to come. We have a large community hall, which we'll be able to use for community events, so not just events for the home, but also for the community. So if speakers wanted to come, or maybe there was an event that the family wanted to be involved in, I'm thinking, sometimes there's receptions or weddings or things like that, we might be able to host there. The other thing that we have is we're going to have a grocery store where residents will be encouraged to come down and help choose what they would like for breakfast or what they would like for lunch. The main meal we will be providing from our main kitchen downstairs, but we're hoping for breakfast and lunch residents will be fully involved in choosing what they would like to eat and even helping prepare it back in their own home if they want to. We've got an adult day program, which is also on the ground floor. And so that will be it's for our community. Again, it's run by Island Health, but there will be 8 spots for an adult day program. In the courtyard, there's going to be two main focuses in there. One will be the chapel or a spiritual place, and then the other one would be the big house, which is our Indigenous space. And I'm going to show you the courtyard in a minute. And the other thing we have down there, we have a wellness centre where residents would be able to come and visit our in-house occupational therapist or our physio. The thing that's not on there is we do have an art room and a music room in our community spaces as well. And we're very fortunate to have an art and a music therapist on site. So this would be a space for them to enable residents to come and be more creative if they want to. And the other thing is a hairdresser. We also have a hairdressing salon down there, so built in to the complex. This is a view from the main entrance, and so one of the balcony that you can see at the front, this one is actually attached to the bistro. When you go through the other side, you'll actually be at ground level, and so one side will have this balcony, and then the other side will be our bistro and going out into the courtyard. Just show you here. This is the sort of architect's drawing. So there's 2 levels. There's 3 levels because we're on a hill. So there's the ground level will have some administrative offices, and it will have our sort of amenities. I'm just going to go through here. I just wanted to, so this is the ground level. You can see it would have our admin area, our parking. You can see that there's the childcare to the left there. And then our in-house kitchen and some staff rooms, and then our maintenance and in-house housekeeping and laundry at the back. And we do have some underground parking for staff and for residents, families that are visiting. Just going to go back to this one. Yeah, so this is, you can see we've got here a typical household. I don't know whether my cursor will work here, and you can see my cursor, but households are joined in for 2. So they'll work as 2 households together, where they'll be sharing the spa, they'll be sharing the laundry facilities, and they'll be sharing the meeting rooms. You can see in the middle here is where we have our chapel and our Indigenous big house. And then this is where I was talking about some of our community spaces. And so it's a little small in here, but essentially this area here is the bistro, and then the community hall, a wellness centre, art room, and then we've got an activity room, the hair salon, and then this is our grocery store here. All of these will be accessible from if you come in through these doors, but also from the outside to give you more of a, I guess, a high street feeling that you're outside. So when you're visiting, the one thing that you'll notice is that residents will be encouraged, they will have to come outside to access these. We're trying to create an environment as if you were at home. You wouldn't necessarily in your home go straight to your community centre in through your house. So this would be, you will be going outside. It's an event that you would be going to, and so people would come outside to access these community spaces. I've already shown you. This is a view from one of the balconies from one of the households. So each household will also have a balcony. And this is a view of one showing one of the sacred spaces. So this actually is the chapel that it's showing here. So you'll be able to see out through the courtyard. And this is the bit that we're very excited about. So the courtyard, as you can see, is going to be broken down into sections. And as I say, this is going to be the chapel. This is the big house. This is where the bistro is. So in better weather, people can sit outside and enjoy a meal with their family. We've got a little bit more of an intergenerational area here, which is the children's play space, which we're going to have some very basic, maybe like a slide and some things for children to play on, but you know, residents and families can sit there with their children. There's we're trying to create an environment where there's lots of shelter, so if people need to have, you know, be out of the sun, that they can sit in the shelter. The other thing we're looking at, which is not on here, is there'll be some raised garden beds, so people, residents and their families can be involved in gardening and outdoor activities if they're interested in that. I think that's everything. And yeah, just I guess an area of and then we put in this walking circle because people like to be able to walk. And one of our philosophies is, you know, freedom of movement and access to outdoors. And so we've got working with different IT companies at the moment around some different, what we call real-time tracking devices that allow that freedom of movement where residents will be able to move freely. And so where I work at the moment, people they're in locked units and it's very hard for them to access the outdoor spaces. And so with some of the IT technology that we're looking at, we're very hopeful that people will be able to access the outdoor by themselves and will be able to know where they are. The piece that comes with this is the building is only half of it. The other half is looking at how we're going to change our model of care. And so I mentioned earlier that most of the care homes that I've worked in, they do focus on a very institutional model. As you can see, where it's very much focused on routines, it's focused on the staff and the routines that the staff have. It's very structured. There tends to be quite a bit of hierarchy within departments, people working in silos. What we're hoping to do is create a social relationship model where where home is not just a place, it's a feeling. It's about flexible routines. It's about residents and families being involved in those routines and allowing and sort of dictating how they want to live their day and what they want to do in their day. So the decisions will be with residents and not made for residents. The environment, everything we're doing, everything we talk about with our designers, our architects is around what would a home look like and how do we ensure that this looks like a home environment and doesn't look like an institution and it doesn't look clinical. We're planning our activities around things being more flexible and more spontaneous. We're also looking at our actual team members and how they can be more collaborative and how there could be smaller groups of people working with residents. Residents at the moment can see very many staff coming through. So we're hoping to be able to create an environment where there's a smaller number of staff working in a dedicated home, and so it gives you that much more of that family feel. The approach that we've been working closely on is something called the Hemmingway model, and I guess people may have heard of this. This comes out of the Netherlands, and it's based around a dementia village villages that have been built in the Netherlands. We at this site, we're not purely a dementia village. We want to create a dementia-friendly village where people with dementia can live. But as you can imagine, we also will have other residents that maybe don't have dementia, may have complex care needs, and so they will be living here too. So what we're trying to create is a dementia-friendly environment. And so we have been looking at how we develop this model of care, looking at these seven pillars that Hemmingway use. So one is around, as I mentioned, favorable surroundings. So that's creating a home-like environment. Lifestyle, where residents choose what they want to do when they want to do it. Obviously, with the rigor of having medical assistance if they require it, but they can choose how and when they want to do it. We don't want to forget that people who are in our care homes actually do have health problems, and so those are important to people. We want to be able to honor that and ensure that people are getting the best physical, mental, and emotional and spiritual care that they need. The other thing that I didn't mention that is we have a medical center inside the home as well, and what we hope to is encourage residents, as you do now. If you want to see your doctor, you go out to see your doctor, and so hopefully we're going to create an environment where they would leave their household, come down to the courtyard, walk to the high street, and they would be able to go in to see their physician in the medical office. As I mentioned a little bit about residents experiencing a normal life and the simple pleasures, and that's what we want to be able to bring people. And that involves choosing what they want to eat, when they want to eat, choosing how they want to live their day and what activities they want to do in their day. And then obviously we've got a little piece around our organization and how our vision and how we, and the education, the curriculum that we're going to have to teach staff how to move ahead with this new model, because it's going to be very different from them. At the moment, they do live a very structured life, their staff in the care home. And so we are creating education modules to prepare them for this change. This slide just talks about how we're doing it, and what we've done is, with the help of the Supports Foundation, we have been given quite a large grant to help us develop a team. And so within that team, we have a project manager, we have a change management specialist, we have an education specialist, and we have an activity lifestyle specialist that are helping us create our model. And so what they've been working on is our vision and our purpose, which is all complete now. The team has been built and we've hired into all of those positions. And what they're looking at the moment is best practices and standards to help them develop the model of care and what we want to look at it. We have here at the View set up a pilot project. So it's one of our units that we have now, where we currently have residents living. We're looking at trying to simulate what it would look like in the new building. And so once we're going to look at, well, we have already started doing mini PDSAs around food, around bathing, to try and simulate what it would look like in the new building. But we also hope to be able to simulate the new model of care around the different staff mix and the staff balance that we would have there. Yeah, and then we were hoping they'd be ready by 2024. The other one that I did overlook is, Dawn, you were mentioning about lighting. So one of the we have been looking at innovative things to use inside the building. And one of them is actually lighting. And so we have been in contact with a company who can look at lighting around circadian rhythms. And we are in the process of fundraising to be able to have that on opening day as well, to be able to simulate, sunrise, sunset within our buildings. So we actually have been doing that. So I'm glad to hear that you've been looking at that too. This is just a little bit of where we are. So we have broken ground, and the construction is on its way. We do have a crane up, and the first floor the cement is already laid. So as I said, we are hopefully on track for an opening of around the summer of 2024. And I just wanted to thank our sponsors, really, Supports Foundation and the Comox Valley Healthcare Foundation, who, without them, we wouldn't be able to do any of this work. We wouldn't have been able to create the teams that we have. We wouldn't be able to look at any of the innovative solutions that we're looking at.